Welcome, my dear friend. Today we begin the story of Route 66, the road that carried dreams, struggles, and freedom across America. It was a path of dust and hope, of neon lights and adventure. Stay with me and discover why Route 66 is called the Mother Road. In the early 1900s, America was changing very quickly. Cities were growing, factories were producing more goods, and people were moving west to look for better lives. But there was one big problem: the roads. Most roads in America were short, rough, and local. They were made of dirt, not strong pavement. When it rained, cars got stuck in the mud. When it was dry, dust covered everything. Traveling long distances by car was slow, dangerous, and sometimes impossible. At that time, most people still used trains for long journeys, but cars were becoming more popular. The automobile was no longer just a toy for the rich. It was starting to change how ordinary families lived. More people wanted to travel, to see new places, and to move from one state to another. America needed better roads. America needed a road that could connect the East with the West. In 1926, that road was born. It was called U.S. Highway 66, later known simply as Route 66. But who first imagined such a great road? The idea came from two men, Cyrus Avery from Oklahoma and John Woodruff from Missouri. They believed that America needed one continuous highway that would run across the country. They wanted a road that would connect Chicago, a busy city in the East, to Los Angeles, a shining city on the West Coast. This road would cross 8 states and more than 2,000 miles. It would pass through Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and finally, California. For many people, it would become the road of hope. Cyrus Avery pushed very hard for this project. He traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet government officials. He showed maps, explained the benefits, and argued that the road would bring business and life to many small towns along the way. He was later called the father of Route 66. At first, however, the new highway was far from perfect. In many places, it was still dirt or gravel. Workers had to dig, clear stones, and lay down pavement. In the 1920s and 1930s, this was hard work. Machines were limited, and much of the job was done with shovels, sweat, and determination. But slowly, the road came together. It became a line that tied the middle of America to the far west. For farmers, it was a way to take their crops to markets in big cities. For businesses, it was a way to transport goods faster and cheaper. And for families, it was a path toward a new beginning. From the very beginning, Route 66 was more than just concrete and signs. It was a road of stories. Imagine a family in a small town in Missouri. The father repairs his old car. The mother packs food into baskets. The children sit in the back seat, excited and nervous. They drive onto Route 66 for the first time, heading west. The road stretches before them, endless and unknown. It is not only a road, it is hope. Soon, gas stations, small diners, and motor courts began to appear along the highway. Entrepreneurs saw an opportunity. If travelers were to pass through, they would need fuel, food, and a place to sleep. This was the start of a new roadside culture that would later become famous. On November 11, 1926, Route 66 was officially established. The road signs went up, white shields with black letters saying 66. For many Americans, seeing that number meant a promise, a way forward, a way west, a way toward a different life. Newspapers wrote about it. People began to talk about this great new highway. Although it was not yet fully paved, it already captured the imagination of the nation. And what made Route 66 even more special was that it was for everyone. It ran through small farming towns, desert villages, and busy cities. It gave small businesses a chance to grow. It gave poor families a chance to move. It gave travelers a chance to see America in a new way, mile by mile, state by state. Unlike the railroads, which passed quickly to the land, Route 66 touched the ground closely. You could stop your car, meet local people, eat their food, hear their stories. It was a road that brought the nation together. By the end of the 1920s, Route 66 was already gaining fame. Writers described it as a ribbon of opportunity. Drivers told stories of long nights, starry skies, and the endless horizon. Photographs showed cars parked at roadside cafes, children eating ice cream, and travelers smiling proudly beside the 66 sign. It was the beginning of a legend, a road that would become part of the identity of America itself. And so, the Mother Road was born. The 1930s in America were not easy years. The stock market crashed in 1929, and with it, many banks closed. Factories stopped working, businesses failed, and millions of people lost their jobs. This time became known as the Great Depression. For farmers in the middle of America, life became even harder. A terrible drought hit the land. The rain stopped, the ground dried up, and the wind began to blow. Strong winds carried away the top layer of soil, turning rich farmland into dry dust. Day after day, week after week, huge dust storms rolled across the plains. People called it the Dust Bowl. Imagine waking up in the morning and finding sand covering your bed, your floor, even the food on the table. The air was thick, hard to breathe. Children coughed, animals died, and crops could not grow. It was as if the earth itself had turned against the people. In states like Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas, many families lost everything. Their farms were gone, their savings were gone, and their hope was fading. But they heard stories of California, a land of oranges, green fields, and jobs. They believed that if they could only reach the West, they would find new life. And how would they get there? On Route 66. Old cars were loaded with everything a family could carry. Chairs tied to the roof, pots and pans hanging off the sides, mattresses strapped to the back. Children sat squeezed together, holding dolls or small boxes of family treasures. Fathers drove carefully. Mothers tried to keep the children calm, and everyone prayed that the car would not break down in the middle of the desert. For many, this journey was not just travel, it was survival. The road stretched for miles and miles. Some days the heat was so strong that car engines boiled, forcing families to stop and pour water into the radiator. Other days the wind blew dust across the road, making it hard to see even a few feet ahead. At night, families often camped by the roadside. They cooked simple meals over small fires, beans, bread, or whatever they had left. Children tried to sleep in the back seat of the car, while parents sat awake, whispering about the future. Sometimes they found small motor courts or cheap cabins, but money was always short. Every coin was counted. Every gallon of gasoline felt precious. Yet, even in these hard times, there were moments of kindness. Gas station owners sometimes gave food or water to poor travelers. Church groups set up places where families could rest. And along Route 66, new businesses began to appear. Tiny diners, grocery stands, small repair shops. These places offered a little hope, a little comfort for people on their long journey west. Many of these families came from Oklahoma, so people in California began to call all migrants Okies. Sometimes this word was used with sympathy, but often it was spoken with anger or prejudice. California was not ready for the flood of new workers. There were too many people and not enough jobs. Farmers in the West worried that these poor families would work for very low pay, bringing wages down for everyone. When the travelers finally reached California, many did not find a paradise they had imagined. Instead of green fields, they found crowded labor camps. Families lived in tents or shacks with little food or clean water. Children played in the dust while parents searched for any work they could find, picking fruit, cutting cotton, harvesting crops. The dream of California was real for some, but for many it was another struggle. Still, Route 66 carried them there. It became the road of hope, even when the hope was fragile. It was a path from dust to possibility. It was a long line that connected despair to a small chance of survival. Writers and artists noticed this. The most famous story came from John Steinbeck. In his novel The Grapes of Wrath, he wrote about a poor family from Oklahoma who traveled west on Route 66. In his book, he called Route 66 the Mother Road. That name stayed forever. The book showed the pain, the hunger, the disappointment, but also the strength of ordinary people. Families held together. They shared food with strangers. They sang songs to keep their spirits alive. And they kept moving forward mile after mile on Route 66. There were many true stories along the road. One family sold their last cow just to buy enough gasoline to reach California. Another family pushed their broken car for 10 miles until a kind mechanic fixed it for free. Children sometimes walked beside the car when it was too heavy to climb hills. Mothers told bedtime stories under the stars, their voices soft against the wind. It was not an easy life, but these stories showed courage and resilience. Even in the hardest times, people did not stop. They kept believing that tomorrow might be better. By the late 1930s, some rain returned and farming slowly improved. Government programs helped rebuild the land and support struggling families. But the memory of the Dust Bowl never disappeared. For those who had traveled Route 66 during those years, the road was forever marked with sorrow, sweat, and survival. Today, when people talk about Route 66, they often think of neon lights, diners, and music. But before all of that, the road carried the tears and hopes of Dust Bowl migrants. It was a road of pain, but also of endurance. It showed the strength of people who had almost nothing, but still kept moving forward. And that is why Route 66 is not only famous, it is meaningful. It is not only a line on a map, it is a story of survival written in dust and sweat. The Second World War ended in 1945, and America entered a new time. Factories that once built tanks and planes now built cars and refrigerators. Soldiers came home, ready to start families. People had money again, and they wanted to enjoy life. And they wanted to travel. This was the beginning of the golden age of Route 66. In the late 1940s and 1950s, cars became cheaper and easier to buy. The dream of owning a family car was now possible for millions of Americans. Bright new models filled the streets, shiny Fords, Chevrolets, and Buicks. Families washed them proudly on weekends. Children argued about who got to sit by the window. The car was no longer just a machine. It was freedom. And where did these families want to drive? They wanted to travel on Route 66. For the first time, many Americans could take vacations. Instead of trains, they chose cars. Instead of hotels in big cities, they looked for small motels and diners along the highway. The journey itself became part of the holiday. A trip on Route 66 was like a moving adventure. The road carried travelers across flat farmlands, over rivers, through deserts, and into the mountains. Every mile brought a new sight. Red rocks in Arizona, tall corn in Illinois, bright neon signs in New Mexico. Children pressed their faces to glass, counting cows, horses, and road signs. Parents sang songs or played games to pass the long hours. At night, the family car pulled into a glowing motor court where a neon sign promised air conditioning or vacancy. During these years, small businesses along Route 66 grew quickly. Motels appeared at every town, each with its own style. Some shaped like teepees, some with colorful doors, some promising a swimming pool for kids. Diners served hamburgers, milkshakes, and slices of pie. Waitresses wore uniforms with bright smiles, and jukeboxes played rock and roll songs for a nickel. Travelers could order a burger and fries, sit in a red booth, and feel at home. Gas stations also changed. They were no longer just places for fuel. They offered maps, cold drinks, and clean bathrooms. Many attendants wore neat uniforms, washing your windshield as they filled the tank. And always, the lights of Route 66 shone bright. Neon signs glowed pink, blue, and green against the night sky. They called out, "Eat here, rooms available, best coffee in town." For drivers, these lights felt like a welcome hug after hours on a road. In the 1950s, a new kind of music was born, rock and roll. It was loud, exciting, and full of energy. And Route 66 became part of this new culture. Teenagers packed into cars, radios turned up high. They drove down the highway with Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Buddy Holly singing through the speakers. The road was alive with music, laughter, and the sound of engines. One famous song even carried the name of the road, "Get Your Kicks on Route 66." It was recorded by Nat King Cole in 1946, and soon everyone was singing it. The song listed the cities along the way: St. Louis, Oklahoma City, Amarillo, Gallup, Flagstaff, Winona, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino. Each name became like a piece of poetry, a rhythm of the Mother Road. To many Americans, Route 66 meant freedom. You could start in Chicago and end in Los Angeles, driving through 8 states in one long adventure. It was not only about reaching the destination, it was about the journey. The wind in your hair, the sun on your face, the wide horizon before you. Young couples took honeymoons on Route 66. Families visited natural wonders like the Grand Canyon. Soldiers returning from war used the road to move west, searching for new homes and new jobs. Dreamers drove with little more than a suitcase, chasing the idea of a better life. The highway became a stage where millions of personal stories played out, each car carrying its own dream. To catch the attention of these travelers, business owners built unusual attractions. There were giant cowboy statues, enormous hot dogs, and motels shaped like teepees. There was a cafe shaped like a giant sombrero, and even a world's largest rocking chair. These attractions made children laugh, and parents stopped the car. They were silly, colorful, and unforgettable. They turned a long drive into a playful adventure. For small towns along Route 66, this golden age was life-changing. Before, many of these towns were quiet, with only a few shops. Now, cars fill the main street every day. Restaurants were busy, motels were full, and gas stations worked late into the night. Money flowed in, and people felt proud of their little towns. Signs saying Route 66 became symbols of opportunity. Every town wanted to be known as a stop worth visiting. This was the heart of America, alive and shining. By the 1960s, Route 66 was not just a road. It was a legend. Movies showed characters driving west, chasing freedom. Songs praised its magic. Writers described it as the open highway, a ribbon of dreams. To drive Route 66 was to touch the soul of America. It was a place where the ordinary became extraordinary, where a simple hamburger tasted like joy and a simple motel felt like adventure. But as the 1960s continued, change was coming. The government began to build a new interstate highway system, faster, straighter, and more modern roads. These new highways would soon replace many parts of Route 66. For now, though, the golden age still glowed. Families still sang in their cars, neon lights still shone, and music still played across the open road. It was a time when Route 66 was not only a way to travel, but a way to live. We have seen how this road was born in the 1920s, how it carried desperate families through the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, and how it later became the shining highway of freedom and adventure in the 1950s. It carried farmers, families, dreamers, and travelers. It became not only a road on the map, but a living story in the heart of America. We felt the hope of those who left their homes with only a car full of belongings. We saw the joy of children pressing their faces to the glass, excited by giant statues and glowing neon lights. We heard the music of rock and roll rolling across the open road, mixing with the sound of engines and laughter. This was the Mother Road at its brightest, a symbol of the American dream. But every road has turns, and Route 66 is no different. In the years ahead, new highways would rise, and the Mother Road would begin to fade. Towns that once thrived would grow quiet, and many places along Route 66 would be left behind. Yet the story does not end there. Route 66 still lives on, in memory, in music, in movies, and in the hearts of travelers who continue to follow its path today. In the next part of our journey, we will see how Route 66 declined, how people fought to save it, and how it became a legend that still inspires the world. And if you want to know what happened after the golden years, don't miss our next episode, where we follow the Mother Road into decline and memory.